I feel like every backpacker has at least one piece of equipment in their gear closet that they bought to fill a specific need or they just bought on an impulse. And for some reason or another, that piece of gear didn't work out and now just collects dust in their gear closet. Tonight, I want to talk about 5 pieces of gear that I've purchased over the years, either to fill a specific need or just kind of on a random impulse. It was just something I wanted, and for whatever reason, that piece of equipment didn't work out for me. So the first piece of gear I want to talk about tonight, I bought for a very specific purpose. I wanted something that wasn't a backpack. I take a lot of shorter day hikes, and just loading everything up into a day pack seemed a little excessive from time to time. So I wanted something different, something that I could carry just the bare essentials, a little bit of food, first aid kit, water filter, things of that nature. So I picked up this Osprey fanny pack. It's actually a really nice, well-made piece of gear. It's got a really comfortable lumbar support on the back. You've got hip belt pockets. The hip belt itself is very comfortable. It's got a 1.5 liter water bladder built inside with the drinking tube, and it carried everything I needed pretty well. Now, things I couldn't bring with me when I was using the fanny pack were like extra clothing layers, rain jacket, things like that wouldn't really fit in here very well. And so over time, I started going back to just a standard day pack, leaving this behind more and more often. Now, on the trips that I did take it, I enjoyed using this piece of equipment for the most part. One of the things that was kind of irritating and I think led a lot to me leaving it behind more and more often is this little magnetic clip for the drinking tube. Looks like it would work really well, but the more you move, this starts to pop off and fall off, and it'd be dragging behind me in the dirt. So I was constantly having to pull it around, readjust it, reconnect it, and it got kind of irritating. And so it was just one of those things where it was just like, I'm just going to bring a day pack. That way I can bring an extra clothing layer, I can bring a rain jacket, I can bring more food, better food, carry extra water and things like that. And over time, this just stayed in my gear closet. The next piece of gear I'd like to talk about is a piece of gear I actually really enjoy. I've done a full review of this piece on the channel, and it is something that I like using. It's my Nemo Flyer hybrid sleeping pad. And what I mean by a hybrid is this has a closed cell foam inner, and then you also inflate it. So it's both a closed cell foam and an inflatable pad. And I have gotten a ton of great sleep on this pad. But as you can see, it's huge. It takes up so much space in my pack, and it's kind of heavy. I have found that there are other pads that are equally comfortable to sleep on that are considerably smaller and considerably lighter. So over time, this has just stayed home more and more, and I've been taking out something like this, Sea to Summit Etherlight, instead. Now, having multiple sleeping pads isn't really that big of a deal to me because I often take friends out who aren't backpackers. They don't have gear of their own, so having like an extra supply of sleeping pads or sleeping bags or quilts or even shelters isn't necessarily a bad thing because I have enough stuff in my gear closet that I can put together an entire kit for someone to take their first ever backpacking trip without having to go out and buy a bunch of stuff to find out if they're going to enjoy this hobby. So I don't actually mind having things like multiple sleeping pads or multiple shelters. Next on the list is my Eagle Nest Outfitters Sublink Hammock Kit. Now this is a hammock, bug net, and rainfly all in one nice convenient little package. It's fairly lightweight and it's pretty comfortable. It is a little bit small and a little bit claustrophobic, but I have had many, many nights of wonderful sleep in this hammock. The only reason this stays home as often as it does is that I so often hike above the tree line and there's just no place to set up a hammock. So anymore, when I do have an opportunity to use it, it's typically at a trailhead. Like if we drive up the night before a hike, so that we can get an early start in the morning. I'll bring the hammock and then leave it in the car and take a tent or another more functional shelter for the areas that we're hiking in. But again, I enjoy this hammock. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great piece of gear. I just typically hike in places where I don't have the opportunity to use it as often as I would like. Next on the list is a piece of gear I bought specifically for my first Tahoe Rim Trail attempt. And it is this little A-Lite butterfly chair. Very lightweight, very compact, and honestly pretty comfortable. I've just found over time that I'm not a chair guy. I don't mind sitting in the dirt. I don't mind just sitting on my bear can when I have that available. So even though it is small and it is lightweight, there are other things I would rather have in my pack that could occupy the same space that this little chair does. Last and most certainly not least on this list of gear that I don't use that often is something that I'm actually a little bit embarrassed about, I have to admit. I had been searching for a new backpack. I had been carrying my Osprey 58 liter for several years. The internal frame had snapped at some point and it wasn't as comfortable as it used to be. The padding and the shoulder straps was starting to degrade a little bit. And I just wanted something different, something lighter, something from a cottage company. So I did a ton of research and I had kind of this list of items that I needed a pack to check off. And I found the Superior Wilderness Design Long Haul 50. This pack checked almost all of my boxes. It's made from a lightweight waterproof fabric. It's from a cottage company. It's durable, it's well designed, it's comfortable. It has a bunch of extra lash points on the outside for winter trips, if I need to stow snowshoes and things like that on the outside. I have that capability with this pack. Right after I bought this pack, I was asked by Waymark to test their, at the time, brand new 50-liter light internal frame backpack. They had just kind of launched this new framed series, the Through 40-liter and the Light 50-liter, and they were sending them out to YouTube channels and backpackers to test and get some feedback on. So while I was waiting for this pack to actually be built, the Waymark Lite showed up on my doorstep. So I started using it, started testing it, started getting the data I needed to give them a full review. And I ended up carrying that light for the full year. And I love it. It is super comfortable. It's very well made. It checked, again, all my boxes. And more often when I was getting ready to go on a backpacking trip, I would just reach for the light. Now, I have taken this particular pack out on a couple of winter trips, and it performed wonderfully. It did everything I needed a backpack to do, and it's a very comfortable, very well-made pack. It's just not as comfortable as my Waymark. So when I'm reaching for a pack, I take a lot of things into consideration. How comfortable is that pack going to carry the weight? How comfortable am I going to be on long miles on the trail? And more often, I grab for that Waymark Lite. And honestly, I think had the timing worked out a little bit different, had Waymark contacted me before I bought this pack, I probably wouldn't have bought this pack because I really enjoy that Waymark Lite. The Long Haul 50, there's nothing I would complain about. It is a fantastic pack. I've taken it out, as I mentioned, on a couple of winter trips. It performed perfectly. My buddy Brian used it on a recent trip. He just wanted something a little bit lighter weight than the pack that he had at the time. It worked great for him. It's a fantastic pack. And again, this is one of those items where I don't really feel bad having extra backpacks laying around, because if a friend wants to come out with me, I've got a pack. I've got the sleeping pad. I've got the sleeping bag. I've got the shelter that you need. I can put together a full kit, and a new person can come out with me and find out if they love backpacking or not. Well, there you have it. Those are 5 pieces of gear I've purchased over the years that I don't use very often. Let me know down in the comments, what are some of the pieces of gear you've purchased over the years that you just don't use as often as you feel like you should, or they just didn't work out the way you wanted them to. Drop a comment down below, and we will talk again soon.